The carnage was unprecedented. Over 50,000 Roman soldiers lay dead on the ground, their blood so thick it painted the earth a dark crimson color, their defeated general dragged away in chains. Their entire army, once the pride of Rome, now nothing but a bloodied, broken memory. This wasn't just a battle, it was a massacre. Not even Rome's greatest generals could explain what happened to their army. Historians argue over the exact numbers, but there is no denying what happened at the River Trebia in northern Italy 2,000 years ago was one of the greatest defeats in history. A defeat so humiliating Rome never forgot it. And at the center of it all stood Hannibal Barca, the greatest Carthaginian general history has ever known. Hannibal's deadliest trap. Now, you may be thinking this sounds like a scene from a Hollywood film, but trust me, this is real history, and it's far more brutal than anything Hollywood could cook up. You see, Hannibal didn't just win battles, he orchestrated pieces of art, deadly symphonies of strategy and brute force that left his enemies not just defeated, but shattered. To understand how he did it, we have to go back to the basics. You see, Hannibal's genius wasn't brute strength or tactical brilliance in war. His true power lay in his mind, his ability to outthink his enemy, to predict their moves before they made them, to strike when they least expected it. And nowhere was this more evident than in his deadliest trap, the Cannae. And it all began with an ambush. Hannibal's army was smaller than his enemy, but he didn't plan to fight a direct battle. He lured the Romans into an area between two hills, the perfect place for an ambush. Then, when the time was right, he struck. His cavalry charged, his infantry followed, and the Roman center was in full retreat. But Hannibal wasn't done. He pushed his attack, hoping to encircle the Romans. And that's when the killing started. Swords clashed, shields buckled, and men fell on both sides. But the Romans were in trouble. They fought bravely, but Hannibal's forces were too strong. And then came the clincher. As the Romans desperately tried to escape, Hannibal had one last trick up his sleeve. A second wave of Carthaginians blocked their path, turning the Romans' last stand into a slaughter. It was brutal, merciless, and over in less than an hour. The Romans who hadn't been killed in the fighting were taken prisoner. Women and children were slaughtered. It was a massacre. Hannibal's trap had worked to perfection. But if you think that's where the story ends, well, you'd be wrong. Because Hannibal didn't just stop there. He took his victory and rubbed it in Rome's face. That's right. After the battle, Hannibal marched into the city of Torgo, the nearest Roman city. He ransacked it, looted it, and paraded his prisoners around the Forum, the very heart of Roman power. And to drive home his point, he put the spoils of war on display, including the standards of the legions, symbols of Rome's might now captured by Carthage. It was a humiliation like Rome had never seen before. They had lost more than a battle. They had lost face, and Hannibal knew exactly what he was doing. See, Hannibal wasn't just a brilliant general. He was also a master of psychological warfare. By humiliating Rome, by taking the fight to their doorstep, he broke their spirit. In the years that followed, every Roman would remember the disgrace of Cannae. Every general would study it. Every soldier would train for it. Hannibal had struck a blow that would echo through history. He had shown Rome that even the greatest power in the world could be defeated, humiliated, and that no victory was ever final until it was over. The battle for dominance. But here's the thing. For Hannibal, Cannae wasn't just a battle. It was a statement, a challenge to the very core of Roman power. You see, for decades, Rome had been Carthage's biggest rival. They were like oil and water, two powers destined to clash. Rome wanted to control the Mediterranean. Carthage wanted the same thing. And with each passing year, the tension grew, the rivalry intensified, and finally it exploded into the Punic Wars. Rome thought they had it in the bag. They had the bigger army, the stronger economy. What could Carthage do? But then came Hannibal. With his daring crossing of the Alps, he proved that Rome's biggest weakness was also its greatest strength. As Rome assembled its armies to crush him, Hannibal kept striking, winning victories that seemed impossible. Each battle was a masterpiece, a symphony of strategy and brute force. He used guerrilla tactics, ambushes, feints, and Rome never saw it coming. But Rome wasn't about to let some upstart Carthaginian dictate the terms. They rallied under the banner of revenge, determined to crush Hannibal once and for all. They sent in their best generals, men like Lucius Aemilius Paulus, Marcus Livius Salinata, and Marcus Terentius Varro. But Hannibal was ready. He met them head-on. He fought them on his terms, and he won. Victory after victory, he drove the Romans back, proving that Rome's legions weren't invincible. Rome was furious, desperate, and the Senate was divided. Some wanted peace at any cost. Others demanded revenge. But they all agreed on one thing. They needed a new leader, someone who could turn the tide, someone who could beat Hannibal. And so they turned to one of Rome's most respected generals, a man who had never lost a battle, Scipio Africanus. Now, Rome's plan was simple. While Scipio trained his army, amassing troops, gathering supplies, Hannibal would keep fighting. They figured they could wear him down, outmaneuver him, and eventually force a showdown. It was a risky strategy, but it just might work. All Rome had to do was hold on long enough for Scipio to get ready. Scipio Africanus, Rome's last hope. Now, When Scipio took command, Rome's fate hung in the balance. He had less than 2 years to get his army ready, to train, to equip, to prepare. And every day that passed without a victory was another day closer to defeat. So he worked tirelessly, drilling his troops, studying Hannibal's tactics, looking for a weakness. At the same time, Hannibal kept up his attacks, harassing Rome, burning their cities, taking prisoners. And all the while, Scipio was preparing his counterattack. He knew that if he was going to beat Hannibal, he needed to do something no Roman general had done before: outthink Hannibal. It wouldn't be easy. Hannibal was a genius, a master strategist, but Scipio was ready. He'd spent years studying Hannibal's tactics, and he knew how to counter them. When Hannibal attacked, Scipio was ready. When Hannibal ambushed, Scipio was prepared. And slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Rome wasn't winning, but they weren't losing either. And with each passing day, Scipio got closer to his goal. He just needed one chance, one opportunity to trap Hannibal. And when it came, he was ready. The Battle of Zama was unlike any other battle in the war. It was a clash of titans, a showdown between two generals who had pushed each other to the limit. The Carthaginians attacked first, their cavalry sweeping across the plain like a wave, but the Romans held their ground, shield against shield, sword against sword. Then came the turning point. Just as the battle reached its peak, Scipio made his move. His cavalry struck, breaking through Hannibal's lines and driving them back. The infantry followed, pushing forward, and before Hannibal knew it, he was surrounded. It was a trap, a masterpiece of strategy, and Hannibal fell right for it. And in the end, it wasn't even close. Hannibal's army was crushed, his cavalry routed, his infantry decimated. It was a massacre. And when the dust settled, only one side was left standing. Rome. Scipio's victory was a turning point in the war. Rome was on the offensive now, marching on Carthage, sacking its cities. And finally, with the Treaty of Carthage, ending the Second Punic War, Rome had won, but at what cost? Thousands of lives, countless families torn apart, and a debt that would take generations to repay. What if Hannibal had won? Now, imagine for a moment that Hannibal had won at Zama. What if his trap had worked? His cavalry had broken through, his infantry had overwhelmed the Romans. Well, history tells us that anything can happen, but it's unlikely. Hannibal was brilliant, yes, but Scipio Africanus was no slouch either. He had studied Hannibal for years, and he knew his enemy's tactics inside out. Plus, Rome was desperate. They had poured everything they had into that war, and they weren't about to lose. But let's just play this out for fun. If Hannibal had won, he would have become a legend, not just in Carthage, but throughout the ancient world. Rome would have been forced to sue for peace, and Carthage would have emerged victorious from the Second Punic War. Maybe Hannibal would have gone on to conquer more. Maybe he would have retired a hero. But the truth is, we'll never know. History is written by the victors, and in this case, the victor was Scipio Africanus. Do you think Hannibal would have won if Scipio had made a mistake at the Battle of Zama? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.